Well, good morning, evening, afternoon, whenever you're watching this. We are moving on from questions on knowledge and skepticism and things like that to the nature of the soul. We will be starting with Augustine. Page 195 is where you'll want to turn in your books. Before you read, I want to kind of preface the question. I want to make sure we're on the same page and we know what the big question is. Really, for the medieval philosophers, our big question is, what is the nature of the soul? For every philosopher we will read, that we have a soul was a decided question. The answer was yes. And so the question became, what is the nature of it? It would be worth our time and energy, though, to understand why we would just assume that this was not a point that needed to be argued. Why do we know that people have a soul? And we've talked about this before. We talked about it last semester. You're all familiar with that one dude's ship. The name escapes me right now. Right? You take one piece of wood at a time from the ship and you bring it somewhere else. At what point does the first thing stop being a ship and the thing you're building with the same planks become a completely different ship? The human body is the same way. There's something immaterial, incorporeal, that is part of the human nature. It's what causes our body to move. It's what engages in rational thought. There's no specific cell, there's no specific part of you that we could say is responsible for all of that. And so that is what we define the soul as. It's that thing which is responsible for intellect, knowledge, reason, movement, for causing the body to move and do these types of things. And so you'll actually find that this is not something that really anyone disagrees with. Almost universally, if you talk to anyone, it's accepted there is something in human beings that causes this to happen, and this is what we call the soul. So the question becomes, it always has been and probably always will be, what is the nature of the soul? Is it higher than the body, lower than the body, subservient to the body? Does it rule over the body? Can it exist without the body? What is the nature of the soul? And so that is our big question that we're going to be tackling. What's the nature of the soul? What is the soul like? And so we will first turn our attention, like we often do in almost all of our topics, to Augustine, who wrote extensively on this. We're just going to read a little bit today to dip our feet into the discussion on the soul. So I'm going to have you go ahead and read page 194 on the customs of the Catholic Church. So you can go ahead and pause, read that short paragraph, and then we will come back and talk about the argument that Augustine is making here. So Augustine starts by saying kind of what I just said. No one debates or questions, does the soul exist? He even says, no one I've ever talked to, no one I interact with doubts the existence of the soul. So, yeah, we'll just assume the soul exists. But now we ask the important questions. And he actually, I think, beautifully asks questions that direct us to try to understand what type of answer we're looking for. If we remember way, way, way back to Socrates, the beginning of the whole school year, right? What was important was the type of answer that Socrates was looking for. That's why, knowledge is all of these things individually and together. It's like, well, that's good, but that's not the type of answer I want. And so Augustine will spend this section determining what type of answer are we looking for and how will we categorize it. And so he starts by talking about what is man? If man is dualistic in nature, body and soul, which one of those, body or soul, is most rightly called man? When we are calling something man, human, right, man or woman, when we look at it, Are we calling the soul inside of the body man, or are we calling the body man? And so he asks some interesting questions, right? Is it the soul and body like a team of horses? Two things working together, and much like a team of horses is one thing, so body and soul is one thing, man. Or a centaur, is it kind of half body, half soul in this weird conglomerate, conglomeration? That's the word I'm trying to say. Conglomeration. Is that what we call man? Is it kind of both of these intertwined, half and half and inseparable? Or does man belong to body alone? And when we call something a man, we're talking only about the body, and the soul is what moves and propels and causes that body to have action. Or do we call nothing but the soul man? And the only reason the body exists is as a vessel for the soul that we call man. And so he lays out all of these questions. But what's important to note is where he comes to at the very end. Very last sentence here, rather. What is best for the soul and body together, or for the soul alone, that is best for the man. And so he doesn't really answer our question, but he points us in the direction of how we're going to know which is more important, and so which is probably man. When we're deciding what is right and better for any quote-unquote man, what is always best is what's best for the soul and body, or if there's a conflict, it's what's best for the soul. If something is good for the body but bad for the soul, it's not good. Take, for example, drugs. People would say, it's great for my body, it makes me feel happy, and, whatever people say to try to defend their drug use. Augustine's answer would be, but that's bad for your soul, therefore it's not good. We should be aiming for things that are best for both our body and our soul, and in the event of a tie, the soul wins out. So what's more important? What's bigger? Soul. Well, how does that answer our big question? What is the nature of the soul? Well, we start here. For Augustine, the soul is higher than the body. That's part of the nature. We haven't determined any specifics or details, but this is what we know. The soul is higher than the body. So there's at least one thing we may have not known before. And your little sentence to underline and understand here, the central thesis of where Augustine will land is, therefore, man, as he appears to man, is a rational, mortal, and earthly soul using a body. This is very interesting how Augustine chooses to define soul. He uses three terms. It is a rational, mortal, and earthly soul. Notice it's not a rational, mortal, and earthly body housing an immortal soul. It's a rational, mortal, and earthly soul. The soul is rational. The soul is the seat of reason. We call it the mind, but the mind exists. The mind qua the philosophy mind, not the gray matter in your brain. The mind is in the realm of the soul. The soul houses the mind. It is rational. But to Augustine, the soul is also mortal. The soul can also perish. And the soul exists here on earth. He wants to say that we can't divorce the soul from creation. That'll be important. And we can't divorce the soul from the body quite yet. There are ways around this, and we have to get there, right? If we're going to believe in a resurrection and a new body and those type of things, that Augustine, as one who is writing, as we read here, on the customs of the Catholic Church, he's going to have to defend those things too. So he's going to have to get around them, but this is where he starts. The soul is rational, mortal, and earthly. And this is kind of the threefold way he's going to start defining the souls. And from here, we will move on to the size of the soul. That's going to be a fun question we'll tackle on Friday. Then we'll read about music, but it has nothing to do with music. That'll be fun. We'll just work our way through Augustine. So, important summary for today. One, our big question, what is the nature of the soul? Know that everyone in medieval philosophy, and almost everyone you'll talk to now, agrees humans have a soul. The disagreement becomes the nature of the soul. So, what is the nature of the soul is our big question. And Augustine's answer is it is a rational, mortal, and earthly thing that is higher than the body and what we call man. So that'll be your lesson for today. Augustine, pretty easy. So this is a good section. I think you'll enjoy this section. There's none of the things we'll be reading are as complex as some of the other stuff we've read. And I think these are good questions. Good questions for you to ponder. So I guess your homework, we use that term loosely around here, but what I'd like for you today is just contemplate that. What is the nature of your soul? And the important then question becomes, why does that matter to you? For Augustine, the question of what is the soul drove him to a life of morals, of living a moral life. It drove him to certain things. He comes across the conclusion that what's best for the body and soul together, or what's just best for the soul and not the body, is what's best. And it's because he wrestled with what is the nature of the soul. So as you go about making decisions, as you, especially you seniors, you're making decisions for the rest of your life, ask the question, is this what's best for my soul and body? Just my body? Or just my soul? These are good questions, good things to ponder and ask. Good luck. We will see you all tomorrow.